Everything's changing from record holders to managers and even stadiums too. We get you caught up to speed on this week's episode of the Indie Ball Report podcast. We're back. Episode number 324 of the Indie Ball Report podcast. It's been a very interesting week, has it not, Ryan?
Been a busy one, I'll tell you that much.
I know. We started with a manager getting fired, like 20 games into the year and thinking, wow, that's going to be our lead story of the week. And then, what do you know? It winds up getting pushed to the 2-hole and arguably even the 3-hole if we really want to get down to it.
Yeah, I know, because Taylor Swift got possession of her masters back.
Does this mean we can all stop pretending to like Taylor's version of these songs?
Taylor's versions are great. They're more matured. They're more understanding. Idiot.
Sorry to all the Swifties out there, but no, I don't support the Taylor versions. No. Or originals only.
Oh, yeah. You want to make sure it's going to the record execs. I understand.
Exactly, I want to make sure the proper individuals get paid.
Scooter Braun. I'm amazed he hasn't come up in the Diddy conversation. We'll deal with that another time. I'm already looking to get sued this week, so.
All right. So I guess that's our perfect segue into Noco's having a bad week. Ryan's going to be at the vanguard of that bad week. Why don't you fill us in with what's happening with the Northern Colorado Owlz?
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm literally making sure that I have a note in my phone to redirect people toward this, because the video I'm putting out is just going to be a long one, and I understand that not everybody's going to want that. And look, I understand. So now that I've got that in my phone, my brain can no longer retain information at this point in the week because it's been a long one. It's been a lot of reading through news articles in cities I don't live in. Where to begin with this? It's your podcast. Where would you like me to begin with this? Should I begin like I did with my full video on Caucasian Heritage Night?
What? Okay, so that's a twist there. Couple thoughts for me going here. One, Ryan's actually finally putting out the NoCo video. That should hopefully be up by the time this is up, or shortly thereafter.
It will be out by the time this is up. Yeah.
Okay, good. So it should be up then. Check out his video for the full details. This is going to be more, I guess, the highlights, the abridged version, the streamlined version, if you would. That's immediately. Second note, right now, when you said you can no longer retain information, my immediate thought went to your Adderall prescription going, stop giving me your toughest battles.
That's about right.
And that's about where I'm at. So I guess let's start at the entry point. What is the baseline for all of this? Obviously, we know they went from, well, actually, let's see, great places are. Does this story begin in Utah still, or when they first got to Colorado?
I guess for the quick version, we can begin in Utah very briefly. Okay. So for background on how the Northern Colorado Owlz became the Northern Colorado Owlz, and if you want to go all the way back to Caucasian Heritage Night, you will have to go check out the full video that Andrew and I did on this topic. Not Caucasian Heritage Night specifically, but we start there because that's where you got to start many things. Essentially, what happened here is Jeff Kotofsky, who is the owner of the Northern Colorado Owlz, formerly the Orem Owlz in Utah, they were playing at Utah Valley University. I guess that's certainly not going to be an overly profitable setup for, if you're looking to maximize what you got going on. So he is looking for another deal. This is back in 19. Let me double check. Yeah, 20. It's actually in mid 2018 that this is going on. So they get themselves in a bad spot because they go, oh, we're going to Pueblo. Actually, we have a deal. Surprise. We have a deal. And then a month later, they went, never mind, we're not going to Pueblo because actually we didn't really look into this fully and it's not going to work out. So they were stuck in a spot where they have already announced intentions to leave a place in Orem where they are contracted to be through 2022. Oops. And not only that, but after the announcement that they were leaving, the one headline was literally about the city being indifferent to them leaving, which is not great. So they weren't even upset they were leaving, but now it's registered. So you don't really have a warm, welcoming place to be. You're losing sponsors. So they got to find somewhere else. At that point, there's the Rocky Mountain Sports Complex, which has evolved. It was going to be the largest sports complex in the world. Apparently, there's some gray area there. It doesn't matter. They shrink that. It's still not working. So Jeff Kotowski takes over as the new owner of that in Windsor, Colorado. And then, in the most common sense move, probably throughout this whole thing, decides he's going to put his team there. Now, if we were to track this, and I think I can, yeah, okay. So the quick version then becomes they get there, 2021 comes. It is very obvious there's no stadium built, like they are in the beginning stages. So they say, well, we're not going to be able to play this year. We're going to take the year off. We're going to come back in 2022. None of these teams played in 2020, and this is now the first year of indie ball for those who don't know, because they were affiliated at the time. Then they became indie ball. Then the reason cited, and this is the first red flag looking back, the reason cited for this is that was COVID safety for fans. They mentioned waiting will allow for more things to be ready. However, and everything to be ready essentially, but they really were leaning in on the COVID safety thing, which is a crazy thing to say because there was no ballpark, but that's what they decided to go with. And then we get around to 2022 and they are going to play some baseball, but they do not have a ballpark. So they end up playing at a bunch of local places. There's a place like 30 minutes away. There's basically a town park that they play at where you're sitting on concrete benches and you can bring your own chair, but still $10 for that ticket, which is pretty crazy. This continues to go throughout this process. They get to 2022. Let me double check at the end of 2022. Where are they? Yeah, they had, I'm not going to go too in the weeds. If you're really into going in the weeds, we go into like every lawsuit in this video. We go into a past project of his that kind of mirrors what's going on here when it comes to Jeff Kotowski's business. There we go. So by the time we get to 2022, we're talking about, we are, okay, the ballpark hasn't been ready, but we think it'll be ready in 2023 mid-season. And then it goes, well, maybe not in 2023, but by the start of 2024. So now the team has to play in 2023 at the sports complex, but in like the second field, which is smaller capacity, not really made for baseball. It's mostly a soccer field. It's just not ideal in the setup at all for players, for fans, anything. Throughout this process, it's been like, oh, we'll be ready maybe in the fall, maybe this, maybe that. The whole time, everyone can see it. It's rural Colorado. That stadium ain't moving along. And in fact, once you get through 2022, it really starts to slow down. So, but despite that, they end up getting there. They play at Future Legends for the first time to start the 2023 season. And some of you may remember they didn't even get through the first game because the lighting was inadequate. And I mentioned that to point out what this shows is just how behind they were on building. This wasn't even the main field. This is the secondary field. And at no point, and it was brutally obvious the lighting was not going to be enough. At no point did they have the lighting up in time to step out and look and go, uh-oh, we're in trouble here. So that means like within days, I would say, of this first game, they were doing the lighting for this ballpark.
All right. So just to catch up the speed to where we are right now, they start in Utah. They then go with an agreement to go to Colorado while they're still under contract to remain in Utah. The city is ultimately indifferent to their leaving or staying for whatever reason that may be.
Yep.
Then they go to Colorado. They are ready to make that move. The facility is not ready. COVID kind of sort of bails them out on that in the sense of it lets them take a year off without raising too many alarms on it.
Yes.
They then get to the point where now in 23, they have to play now. They're committed to this move. They go to the field setup, which would be the Future Legends complex, right?
Yes. Sorry. I was not ready for the question.
Yeah, that's fine. And the facility itself, the primary one, not ready to roll yet for use. They have to go to a secondary site that's on the same, complex, or in the same complex rather. And that facility has its own issues, but at least can be playable under certain conditions.
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
That is a good summary. And I'm sorry that I'm bouncing around a lot. This video that is on the going live is 2.5 hours. So I am really trying to spare details here to not drag this out. But I'm trying to make sure I'm hitting the major points.
Yeah, now, I just want to give everyone a general timeline on what we're doing here, so that way we keep it clean. Yep.
Throughout this time frame, there has been occasional rumblings of unpaid bills or lawsuits against Kotovsky and Future Legends, but no full track record of this at this point. Okay. Now, as they get settled into this new ballpark, which is again not ideal, it's not the actual ballpark they're going to be wanting to play in long term. A couple other stories come out. A concrete company is suing Future Legend for payment. Meanwhile, properties that Jeff Kotovsky is involved with in Michigan are being shut down. They're being sold. They're being put into what's the word I'm looking for? My brain is just not going for it right now. Basically, with a receivership. Yep, thank you. And there's little things like that. So this is all the way back in 2023. After already, let's be honest, there's red flags before that with the delays in construction and seeming like they're not ready for those delays whatsoever. Then we get through 2023 though, and ahead of 2024, after both Casey Kotovsky, who is Jeff's son, he's running the show now in the Colorado at the Colorado site. They both said they were 100% sure that they will be ready for opening day in 2024. Well, it is announced just ahead of that opening day that they will be delaying the opening of that stadium again. Meanwhile, at this point, Kotovsky is also the owner of Grand Junction, a part owner. He's splitting that with Mike Tollin, who is now the full owner, because obviously it seems Kotovsky had to get out of some things he was invested in. Mm-hmm. Then we get more news of a legal dispute over unpaid construction fees at the sports complex. Then again, more stuff being sold off up in Michigan. So literally it is just like lawsuits and things being sold off. And then we really start to get into it as we get later into 2024, as we get an article about the sports complex facing legal troubles, and the one of my favorite headlines of all time, which is the Field of Schemes ? Headline. And that did a pretty solid job of breaking things down here. So we'll dig in on that one real quick. What it alleges is there's a lot of safety issues at the construction site, which I believe as early as like 2023, Casey Kotovsky was saying it's no longer a construction site. It's a park that has construction going on or whatever it was. And I was like, that sounds like a construction site, big dog, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, there were just general complaints like ongoing use of narrow road accesses, like roads you're not supposed to be using frequently. They're being used. Not enough like accesses, not enough things keeping people from construction areas, a lot of random issues. But to really get into it, what it says is the city, the town manager of Windsor is like, yeah, this project's not where we would like it. We'd like to see it going a lot better. Jeff Kotovsky is saying that we have a new general contractor and we're ramping back up. We expect to be going again in the next couple of weeks, and we'll remember that. We're going to circle back on that one. And then the Coloradoan arranged a tour, and we discussed this. They arranged a tour with Casey Kotovsky, something they had done in past years. And then 1 week later, he canceled the tour and then texted that he would be, quote, unavailable for the foreseeable future. They asked again to go on the tour August 21st, 8 days later, and did not get any answer back on that one. So again, the initial construction of the Future Legends started in November of 2019. At that point, Kotovsky told the Coloradoan that it would be fully built by early 2023. At the time of this article, it's late 2023 and is not even really moving. In July of 2022, this is where I'm saying there's a bit of a summary here so we can get everyone caught up. Kotovsky again said they were confident that at least the project's main stadium would be fully operational and would be open in April of 2023. They said they were 100% sure it would be open in April of 2023. We are now getting late into 2024 and it's not ready at this point in the story. It's once they're in March of 2024, they, as I said, sort of like, oops, it's actually not going to be ready, but it'll be ready at some point this year. And then the move just didn't happen throughout that year. Hotels that they said were being built are not moving along. There's like the shell of a dormitory building they built, but they haven't gone anywhere with it. And they basically just have bits and pieces of this thing put together. So nobody's willing to commit to anything. The town is like, we believe this will still succeed, but we're not sure how, essentially. And there's just a bunch of legal issues around this thing. That's shortly followed by a photo gallery post by the Coloradoan, which shows like basically they did their own tour, it looks like, and that thing is very much not moving along. And you can tell because there's weeds growing up on things like construction stuff. So,
okay. So now it's to pick up from the last point where we checked in on.
Mm-hmm.
It's throughout 23 and 24. We have no real meaningful progress being made.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the site has stalled out.
Mm-hmm.
We have various lawsuits flying every which way here, ranging from unpaid bills to everything else, really, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And the general account from the ownership side of things is that we're still on pace, we're still going to be fine, it's going to work out. And it seems as though the local government now is starting to show some doubt, but keeping a good face.
And the main refrain from ownership has been that these are outside issues interfering, and it's people not doing their job, and it's things that aren't in their control. Now, they did say, as I just mentioned, in a couple weeks, which this was in late August, things will be moving forward. Well, a couple weeks later, things were moving forward. And that is because a judge placed the sports complex in receivership as the loans went unpaid. And that's where we really start getting details about how bad the finances were, if you want a reminder of that. Kotowski failed to make payments on 6 loans, originally totaling nearly $47 million to U.S. Eagle Federal Credit Union in New Mexico. Basically now the receivership is going to take over and run things. There's a big back and forth, which is kind of wild because he says, well, we have somebody, we had a new general contractor, we're ramping back up, and now this is happening just after the guy doing the conservatorship or the receivership is saying like, yeah, we're going to assess how to do this and we're going to get it handled. I'm going to bring in some people to actually manage this thing who know what they're doing, and it'll take a couple of weeks, but we'll be good to go. In the meantime, Kotowski is going wild. This is where the drama picks up, and this is where it starts to hit at, I think this season. This is where I started hearing rumors that 2025 was not going to happen. And this is back in September of last year. And the red flags were everywhere because things start getting crazy. So Kotowski claims that in a legal filing, this was not just like talking to the media, that a lender that was suing them, that lender who I just mentioned for the $45 million in loans, conspired with the project's general contractor to put them in financial distress. In effect, there was a conspiracy between U.S. Eagle and the general contractor to place future legends in financial distress, enabling U.S. Eagle to pursue a receivership, which is a crazy allegation, man. That's huge. It seems like it never really took off. We'll not really hear much from this again. The town of Windsor is given the complex basically till October 31st to fix their safety issues before pulling the occupancy permits. And that is going to be an ongoing threat that they're trying to fight off, is the occupancy permits. The project is encumbered by multiple outstanding liens totaling more than $13.9 mil. They have been sued for over $56 million in several lawsuits. And
the occupancy threat, that's for October 31st of 25 or 24?
2024. And that will linger through this as we bring this thing home. Okay. So to wrap this thing before it goes too crazy, he tried to say the receivership doesn't know what they're doing and can't run this place. And basically everybody in the world was like, you obviously can't run this place. And that was the end of that conversation. There was things like, there was materials delivered and left outside. And they were like, yes, because you did not make an inside of this building as simply open to the elements. And that kind of is where that left that court claim from Kotowski. Lots of lawsuits back and forth. And that's where we start to get to spring of this year. We've heard now from the receiver. Yep. And we've heard at this point from the receiver that things are in disrepair and worse off than people thought. The developers have now filed for bankruptcy. Kotowski has filed for bankruptcy on this project. A judge has since, because several lenders challenged that, a judge has basically said no to that attempt to file for bankruptcy. And this is where it got real wild. The receivership, they found that the one profitable thing on the site, which was the indoor bubble, which obviously does well over the winter with Colorado.
Yeah.
The money going to them, they hastily made a new Future Legends company, Future Legends 5, which became, and then made them the owner and then leased from them so that money would get redirected and basically paid to Future Legends in a different format. And the receiver was like, that is, no, that's not how that
essentially
works.
It's almost like a private equity takeover where they form a new corporation to buy out the other one and take loans against the thing they're buying out on.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Elsewhere, the Future Legends were saying that they had, in order to get the bankruptcy going, and in the bankruptcy court discussion, Kotowski had said that they had $300 million secured. Turns out that did not seem to be the case, and the judge called them on that. The USL League One had terminated franchise contracts with the team that was playing at Future Legends, owned by Kotowski. Both soccer teams were kicked out of their leagues, not in the Pioneer League though. The Future Legends teams said they plan to play still in 2025, and that brings us to this situation, which is the safety issues had not been addressed. Those ones that were kicking around, but they keep pushing the deadline back. The recorded debts have not been satisfied at all from Future Legends. And let me see. Sorry, I'm making sure I'm getting all the main points here. Despite issues with permitting, Kotowski, he sued Windsor to retain Future Legends permits. A judge extended the permits through April 26th, saying, all right, get it cleaned up. And that's where I went, this might be a problem. Because every time it gets extended, nothing happens. It's literally just extend that deadline and we'll make that deadline work. But right now we got to deal with the next fire. And they never get back. That seemed to be the cycle here. The work is stalled out. Nothing is changing. Once April 26th comes around, Windsor shuts down Future Legends activities, citing the lack of safety fixes that they've put in place. That was in April 28th, by the way. So let's keep that in mind. That's over a month ago now. They were denied in federal court when Future Legends went to appeal to keep those permits. Then Future Legends sued Windsor to extend the permits again. Windsor accused Future Legends of unpaid bills and delay tactics. And then a court rejected the Future Legends lawsuit against Windsor. And then the court blocks the use of Future Legends Dome and Stadium from the teams owned by Future Legends. And that is where we land. So that block. So let's keep in mind, and this is where the time frame is. I go through all that to say this, and this is where I'm annoyed. In the video, I specifically sort of push at Kotowski. Us sitting here, not as financial analysts, but as analysts of indie ball. In the winter, the soccer leagues involved here went, you are not welcome in this league. This is not good enough. The Pioneer League had months knowing that they had permits on the line and they might lose access to a stadium and have a homeless team. These, again and again, unfulfilled promises here. They see April 26th is going to be the date after it being pushed back and back, and they keep them on the calendar. I know April 26th is close to the season, but the fact that they continue to just be like, I'm sure that's fine, is mind blowing to me in a conversation of what is acceptable as a league and what are we doing here. And I can't help but wonder, when I knew and people in my DMs knew this, they said at one point, or someone said, maybe from the league said, we're pretty confident that they're going to be fine for opening day. What I already had said last fall was that there's no way this team makes it to opening day this year, to the home opener. And to understand that the deadlines were set up right before spring training, April 26th, and then again, that a court blocked use and was able to block use of the site. It is unreal to me that the Pioneer League seems to have not had any backup plan for this. This is not a slow burn. And that's part of why I wanted to go through the whole history. This is not like, a bunch of things went real bad, real quick. The tariffs got him. Now he's out of money. This is not that. This is a slow burn of multiple years. They're being sued for unpaid bills in 2020 up in Michigan. Like, this has been an ongoing problem, and the Pioneer League has continued to steer into relationships with Kotovsky, and I don't understand it. It makes no sense other than the fact that I know it's hard to replace a team, but you seem pretty dead set on expansion. I'm sure you can figure something out. I know Grand Junction just threatened to go to Pueblo. That's not a great scene because Pueblo is not really a great site either. But in short, it's a mess. It's mind-boggling to me that the Pioneer League just let this ride for as long as they did. When I was tracking for months the fact that they are not paying bills, they are not building. There is no after August 22nd, there was no construction equipment on the site. Other than the fact that it seems that the president of the league, Mr. Shapiro, is friends with Kotovsky, as he is friends with Mark Tittle or whatever his name is, who is the president of Grand Junction. That's all I can figure. And if we're just letting our friends do whatever the hell, what are we doing here as a league? That is not acceptable. What are your thoughts? Sorry, I threw that. There was a lot of info there. And I was like, we're going to do the quick version. And that was the quick version. You see why the video is so long. But like,
the quick version is 25 minutes.
This is a long history of what happened here. Like, this is, I just need people to be clear that this is not an oopsie daisy. This is negligence widespread. Everyone's at fault here, by the way. Windsor's a victim, but they're also at fault. Kotovsky's at fault. And he is probably doing something illegal. The Pioneer League is at fault for letting this happen. They had options. They had left and right turns they could have made. And instead they have this. We know there's other organizations having financial trouble, and it makes you wonder what else is going on there. So that might be the next deep dive, but it just had to be. I didn't want to just jump in and be like, here's the crazy things that happened over the past 2 weeks, because it paints a picture of like it's just a series of bad breaks, which is what Kotovsky is constantly trying to paint things as. And it cannot be understood to be that.
I'm trying to gather a cohesive thought here because I don't want to misspeak. But while I'm doing that, just for reference, full video already up, Indie Ball Nation YouTube channel, also on podcast platforms.
Yeah, it'll be on podcast platforms as well.
Okay. Links in description to wherever you can link.
Links will be in the description. If you look at the video, I'll also throw a number up for each link when I reference it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a garbage fire, and
yeah, I just want to show we're excited.
Yeah, I think again, I know that was not the cleanest way to go about it, but I wanted to get as much detail as possible without getting into every detail. But those were the main highlights here, and it's been an ongoing headache. And I feel for Windsor. I mean, they've been having this thing hang over their heads for years now. This construction started in like 2016. I mean, and it's just become embarrassing. So it's a lot of unfortunate stuff right now. Oh, I'm sorry. Right now. Goodness. Let me wrap this up appropriately, shall I?
I was going to say the main catalyst to all of this, we kind of neglected.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're right.
Getting to it, I think I sidetracked.
I'm so in the weeds on the legal stuff that I just sort of let that ride. So this is how Northern Colorado season has gone thus far. They lost game 1 in Rocky Mountain 15-3. They lost game 2 in Rocky Mountain 25-7. They lost game 3 10-9 in Rocky Mountain. They lost game 4 21-0. Very much a football score. Then something strange happened. This is May 24th, last Saturday. As you were certainly sitting down with your family and turning on your favorite podcasting equipment to listen to Indie Ball Report, like it's the fireside chats. The NoCo Owlz and the Rocky Mountain Vibes played 2 games, which was fascinating because there was no rain out to speak of. And the Northern Colorado Owls were the home team for one of these games, despite it being at Rocky Mountain. For the record, they lost game 1 9-8, and they lost game 2 23-2. So they got a safety, which is fun. Now that raised some eyebrows. The next day, this is not very well announced in the future, by the way. This kind of just happens. They play 2 as well. They only get 1 game in because of weather, but they lose. They actually get their first win of the season, winning 7-1 as the home team again, playing Rocky Mountain at Rocky Mountain. On the 26th, they have a scheduled off day. On the 27th, their home opener is postponed. 28th, postponed. 29th is postponed. What fierce weather we must be having. But there is no weather. Instead, they are not able to get into their ballpark. As we mentioned, they've been locked out, and they have not done any of the work to get unlocked out because there's actual safety issues at that ballpark. The ongoing headaches continue as they revert back to their, 2022 era where they were just playing at whatever county park they can find or city park they can find. Right now, what was the name of that place? It was the Fort Collins City Park, I want to say. But there's some pictures of it. I pulled up in the video. I think it's hard to see in the video because it's sort of on screen behind us as we talk. But the interesting thing is that they're playing at this park, which is, if you have been to a middle school or even high school field or even little league field, you'll recognize the yellow plastic on top of the fence.
Well,
for
piping,
safety.
But,
Piping, yes, thank you. That is what we have here. That is the field that we're dealing with. It's chain link fences. It is very little seating. It is small dugouts. I don't think it can fit the whole team. This is something similar to what they did in 2022, where they literally had guys standing under a tent next to the dugout. This is what's going on here. They played 2 today with Rocky Mountain. They got popped in both. Yeah, they're playing Rocky Mountain 12 times to start the year, which is probably a benefit to them because they're so close to NOCO. But it has since been announced as well that they're going to be playing their 6-game series this weekend, which was supposed to be home with Billings, will be at Billings. So fun stuff there. If you're Yuba Sutter, who's supposed to play them in a couple weeks in NOCO, you got to be like, can we not travel there? Can you come here? Can we not travel all the way there to go play at City Park? It's crazy. It is Pecos League stuff, except at least half the Pecos League teams have a more real professional ballpark.
there is a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, man.
I don't know how to comment on the legal issues. I don't know how to comment on the financial part of it. I'm not well versed enough to do that. However, from the strict baseball angle of it, and talking from the league perspective, no matter how much of the initial reporting on it from the primary sources were accurate or inaccurate or however it might be, the fact there's that much of it does tell you that you should have an emergency plan in place. Something better than,
Yes.
yeah, if it goes south, we should probably have a place to put this team. And
Okay.
I do understand the desire to keep the team where it is, the desire to keep it with the ownership group that seemingly wants the team, and keep the team in a location where, in theory, you will have a very new ballpark that should be of higher quality in a league where most teams are older, most ballparks are older. Hell, that's the reason why all these teams were cut from affiliated ball. Simply put, they didn't meet the standard MILB was trying to get. So I understand the appeal of doing that. However, you knew there were problems from the get-go in 23. I know I had plenty of players and whatnot comment on we changing the trailer and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's all just minor quality of life stuff.
I didn't even hit the summary. Yeah.
Yeah. That was all just minor quality of life stuff there, where even the one game, I believe it was in NOCO, where they didn't have laundry. So they had to bum spare uniforms from somebody, if I recall correctly. And it was a very interesting setup there. The fact that was the growing pains there, I assume if you are on the league side, you are privy to conversations that I am unaware took place. Perhaps I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt there, but I'd rather do that than, go off the assumption that they never happened and you never thought to address it. Regardless, I assume in those conversations that it was explained to you like, yeah, it's a growing pain. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. We're going to sort it out. And you got a satisfying answer. But I do wonder if, from the Pioneer League perspective, they started growing too quickly. They felt pressure to keep adding. We know about how finances have been a problem in the league since going independent. You know, the reality of having to roster your own players, your own coaching staff, pay for the insurance for these guys, pay for the travel to and from. All these expenses really start to add up. Easy, quick fixes. Hey, we'll expand to somewhere else that we can get an expansion fee from and have league dues to, and it'll flip the ship for now, and we'll worry about the rest of it later on. And as long as one of these teams hits big, we can be okay. We can get by. And I think for 24, their focus is like, okay, well, let's just make sure Oakland works. Let's make sure Oakland's successful. And, you know, they had the original field at the college fall through, so then they wound up going to Ramundi. And you had the situation in YOLO where you had to play day games because the lights were a problem. And now they're in Yuba Sutter. And so it feels like, for me, the best case scenario for this front office of the league, that is, the league front office, is that you had a lot of fires you weren't expecting to pop up all in quick succession. And as you were putting one out, the next one would appear. And this just kind of became a situation where you said, it's an owner we're familiar with. It's an owner that says they have it under control. And as long as they're able to play games, we're not going to worry about it. We're going to focus on what's happening in California because that's where the future of this league is. It's going to be more on the coast, and we got to get them up and running because Oakland now has been the team we're going to push, the team that we're going to, you know, make sure works. They're going to get a lot of press headlines, and they're going to kind of be our prize cow here. And we got to make sure they work, and we'll worry about everybody else later on. And they kind of got lost in everything that was happening. That's kind of how I view this situation at the moment. Now, as far as the actual, you know, dealings of the team with the city and how it moves around, it's hard to really say much on that. It definitely feels like a situation where they walked in the door expecting like, okay, it'll all be fine. And then quickly realized, oh, wait, there's more to this than what we were expecting, and got caught up. And it feels a lot like Windsor said, this will be great on paper, and it should have regular development issues. And then when they started becoming irregular development issues, they were kind of in a position where they said, it's a large chunk of land. It's a large investment we already made here. We can't just fold it. We got to keep going on and on and on. And it finally reached the point where they said, we haven't seen a real effort being made, or a notable effort being made, to where issues are being corrected, debts are being settled, progress is being made in the construction. We've reached our breaking point. And I think the breaking point for a lot of parties in this was the USL 1 team going out. I think for a lot of people, once you have that third party from a league that is, I don't want to call it comparable.
Similar in many ways to an indie league, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to call it one-for-one comparable to the Pioneer League because there are differences there. But I would definitely say the USL as a whole, structure top to bottom, is really finding its footing. It's really gaining notoriety. They're really starting to get things going between the USL 2, USL 1, USL, eventually their connection with the MLS. It's all starting to really come together to a solid structure for an organization that really nobody knew about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They've now really started to get a foothold and really grow soccer, association football, whatever you want to call it, in the United States. So I think when they pulled out, that gave enough people like, okay, a name you recognize just did something that is universally seen as a vote of lack of confidence, a vote of no confidence, let's say.
Right.
And I think that's really where everyone started to say, okay, well, maybe now this is the catalyst to make something happen. which then brings us back to the point you raised, which is when that happened with the soccer club, why did the Pioneer League not immediately start to figure something out? And that's really the question I'm left wondering here. You were there for the longest point. You had the most history with this group, with this organization, and presumably with the operations, therefore. Hell, you know people that have to deal with them because they're all in your league. So you should have had enough eyes in the situation to say, regardless of how this turns out, it's something we need to monitor. And again, I understand from, as I just explained with the whole California expansion, your attention was split in many directions there. And I'm sure there's plenty of ownership groups as well that were, raising their own complaints and their own gripes, as happens, with any league. I'm sure anyone in league management could tell you how many times they get, various team officials calling them on a day-to-day basis to complain about something. But there's someone TP'd the tree in front of my house issues, and there's the someone smoking by the propane tank issues. And this seems to be the latter. And so that's really the takeaway for me in all this. As I said, I'm going to focus on the indie ball side because that's the side I'm most well-versed in. And I'm just taking away that it feels like the league should have been more proactive in this situation here. And perhaps they were, for all I know. Maybe they did, and this is the best situation they could come up with. I just have a hard time believing that.
I have a hard time believing that when people inside the league have messaged me saying that the league is blatantly not doing enough about this and they know all about it. Just gonna say, and I again can't name names because of the nature of the people involved here, but I can tell you that much.
Yeah. And it just the other part of it too is you look at the current state of the Pioneer League. And I know we said this week we're going to talk a lot about on-field Pioneer League talk, and this is a hell of a way to get back to talking about the Pioneer League. The last two major times we tried to do a preview, but no one put out schedules for opening day, and now this. So we will get to positive Pioneer League talk in a little while, but you just have such a string of things recently where it's like, okay, we have concerns about one ownership group and how it looks like they're really building up footage for a documentary, which, currently speaking, they seem like a pretty decent ownership group, all things considered. At least Oakland's well ran, and it seems like Yuba Sutter is really getting their footing. So,
regardless of motivations, it's going okay right now. So
I'm willing to back off of them for quite some time. They're at least putting effort to one end goal. I mean, you can argue that all day, but they are doing something, and they do, at the very least, seem to care about the areas they're in. So that's that. But the whole saga around Oakland was a situation. The whole saga around the ballpark from in which Yolo played him was a situation. You have in Ogden open LinkedIn posts going, hey, how do we get these insurance prices down? They're killing me. And then going on a broadcast earlier this week and talking bad about the team defense and overall effort being shown. Lovely there. So you have all these different incidents that pop up fairly publicly that kind of peel back the curtain on what's going on. And it's not every team, right? It's isolated to a handful of them, and some of them really aren't even that bad. But the point is, you can't go around having these things, right? For all that we slag the other leagues, every league gets slagged for something at some point across the board. I can think of an instance for each of the other three major ones. I mean, Lord knows how much we hit the Atlantic League for stuff. The American Association, we always hit them for the various random, sponsorships they have. The whole Chicago deal from last year. We've called out plenty of individual teams. The Frontier League, we've mentioned too in the past, like there's ownership groups that are just not cutting it, and various other things here. We take our shot when we see a shot to take that's justified. But to the credit of the other three, they're usually not airing out dirty laundry in public, and they're usually doing a pretty good job of containing the fire, right? They may not put it out, but they'll contain it, and it'll at least be it'll be a slow burn that takes a while to truly understand what the situation is. And at least then when you step back from it, in a lot of these cases, you go, all right, like it was bad, but it wasn't like that bad. With the Pioneer, it's just like one thing after another, and the individual incidents aren't too bad normally. But then you start putting them together, and you put them together on the timeline, you're like, all at the same time, though.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And so that's really where I'm going to direct the line of criticism too, because like I said, I'm going to stick to what I know. And it's just, I have a lot of concern about what the league's doing right now and where they're going to go to. Because you cannot continue to have these kinds of incidents play out publicly. We could go through the variety of different reasons why that can't be. I think most of them are fairly obvious. It's bad in the public eye. It's bad for attracting fan sponsors support. It's bad for stability of the league. It's bad for attracting new ownership. It's bad for finding civic support. It's bad just optically to have that sitting there. It's bad on so many different levels. You just can't have it. You can't have it. And it keeps happening. And that's what I keep coming back to is, are we going to have our coming to Christ moment where we realize, oh, this is not something we can keep doing. We have to take account and change our ways. Or are we going to continue down this road and hope it figures itself out and just hope that what has happened so far has either been overstated or have been just bad luck? But if we're going to do that, I'll just say this. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And if you keep getting this unlucky, what does it say about what you've done?
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts. I'm going to try to get through them fairly quick here because some borderline like overlap with you. Some are just, I don't even need to elaborate on them too far. We've been talking about this for an hour now, but when it comes to the Pioneer League, this whole situation brings up some concerns, and the people involved bring up some concerns here, right? So I think back to Gastonia, which Gastonia if you don't remember, mid-season, all of a sudden players were like, we're not taking the field until we get paid because we have not been getting paid on time. Like Rick White had to be in that clubhouse and like work that out. Southern Maryland had to help cover pay. And what went down from that was essentially the league, and by the league, I mean like owners who chip into a pot, covered the expenses to run the team for the rest of the year so that it didn't collapse. So when I see the Pioneer League, I do not see that. The Atlantic League is a league with more money. I do not see that in the Pioneer League. And that's going to be a problem because I don't know that they have a backup plan for this situation. And they are not that is not a league to do a travel team. And it's going to be a very expensive mess.
Yeah, that's if I could cut in. That's one of the key differences too, is if you look at each of these other leagues, they have a base of teams in major cities. The Atlantic League has a couple teams in the New York area with Staten Island, Long Island. The Pioneer League does not have that. Their largest cities probably, no doubt, is Oakland. And then what? Probably Rocky Mountain with Colorado Springs, maybe Ogden, Boise perhaps. Sure. But all of these are definitely not your A-level cities. Some of them are scraping the B tier. But you have that. The American Association and Frontier, they each have Chicago. In addition to that, with the Frontier, you have several teams in New York, New Jersey, general New York metro region. You have Brockton, that's the general Boston metro region. You have these things, and Quebec's in the Quebec City metro. So you have teams in these major areas. Even Lake Erie, I don't think Avon's terribly far from Cleveland either. Washington's right around Pittsburgh too. They're all around these major cities. So you are able to draw from that financial base. Not only is the ownership group probably going to have more money to begin with, because also they're fairly local, and also they made their money in a bigger city, so more money there. But also your sponsors are going to have more money. Even your small businesses are going to be larger than in these smaller areas. So that's just something I want to point out there for the financial base.
Yes. Now, this is also why, and because of the expense of keeping teams playing at random places and the bad vibes, my prediction on this, and this is going to connect to another point here, is I think give it a month or so, I think the Owls are back in that Future Legends ballpark. I think safety things are handled by the receivership and prioritized. I think the league will not be able to foot the bill. They'll partially foot the bill. And I would predict that a friend of Harrison Shapiro ends up at least taking over some sort of ownership of the team, potentially with the plan to move or to stay in Windsor or to bail. I'm sure Pioneer League would like to stay because there might be some lawsuit vulnerability there if they're involved with this and like, oh, we're putting a team here, yada, and then they're like, well, bye. Okay, I could see that being weird. That's just my prediction. I partially predict the friend of Harrison Shapiro thing because it does touch into another owner, Grand Junction, and when we talk about the practices of the Pioneer League that we get concerned about, it's bringing in friends of the league president to own teams, and then, after talking about how loyal they are and how excited they are to be in Grand Junction, threatening to leave Grand Junction if they don't pay $100,000 in bills that for the owner, not like they owe the owner. That kind of thing is giving a bad name to a lot because it doesn't just give a bad name to that owner and that team. Like the league president vouched for him. The league president had to come back in and reiterate that they're committed to Grand Junction. Like he had to come back and be like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Cool down. So that is where the optics of this get really bad. And where it continues to get bad is even if you're able to field that team, and I'm not going to dunk on NOCO's on-field play very much because everybody in that organization is in a bad spot right now, and they don't deserve that. We've seen dudes who suck for some really sketchy teams, and they get in a solid spot and they're fine. They're giving up tons of runs right now. We went through the scores. They're not scoring much. It's a mess. And here's the problem, right? Because you might be like, well, it is what it is. At least there's no fans coming to their games, like whatever. The problem is, let's assume there's two types of people coming to your games for the Pioneer League, people who are into it and people who are not into it. They're just checking it out. Category 1, who are into it, will see this and go, like, I know enough to know this is trash baseball. Like, I don't know that I need to be paying to see this. Like, this is making me think less of this league that they have this team bouncing around, even just for 6 games in my home team's stadium. They've been putting on some, as we've seen, some pretty unimpressive performances, and they're not the only one. By the way, there's a couple teams who've gotten clocked a few times this year, and they're getting some weird scores, more than they seem to have last year, which they seem to be getting back on track. The other side of it is, if you are a casual and you come in and you see a game with tons of walks, constant runs, like it's fun when it's like, oh shoot, it's like 12-7, it's 9 like there's excitement happening. Once it's 20 something runs, it's like, what is happening here? Like something doesn't feel right. You're like, well, this certainly isn't something you see in the majors, so it takes down the legitimacy of it. That is where the lack of parity can hurt. Lack of parity can be fine, but when it's a bad product, and an obviously bad product, that's where you start to hurt other teams even. So that's a concern as well. And what it all comes down to is with going back to the Grand Junction owner, bringing back like the expansion in Colorado. The concern we've talked about before is they seem to really be intent on building without fully strengthening the foundation. The original clubs here are the ones who are going, like, we are lacking money and we are in trouble here, or we are not doing well. And they are focused on expanding rather than strengthening that. So it's really obnoxious when it's like, hey, it makes you wonder, are they expanding because they legit want to expand, or are they expanding because they lack confidence in the teams they have currently?
That's a fair point. And that's going to go on to something that to the point though, that's one of the things I was thinking about when you mentioned Grand Junction in there. I do wonder if we do a musical chairs routine where, okay, well, we'll move like
you're not getting along with Grand Junction.
Yeah, NOCO can go to Grand Junction, and Grand Junction can go to Pueblo, and we'll promise to put a team back in Windsor when the facility is all done and set. So really, it's not like anybody's losing anything. We are really just like adding an expansion team in there. Like that kind of musical chairs routine to set everything up. I don't understand the whole league line aspect of it though, so I'm not going to say that's even possible or not, but it's certainly one thing I do wonder about. But I do think partially with the expansion bit is it does have kind of like a late stage USFL type vibe where we're just going to keep throwing out these franchises because that'll at least bring in cash flow right now.
Yep. They're going for the buy-in, the startup the startup buy-in.
Exactly. And if we can go ahead and just get that money up front, we can settle everything else down. And some teams are going to probably wind up dying off, but what's left will be a good core to move forward with. And we'll just work with that. And that just feels like a real house of cards that's waiting to fall down if that is what they are doing. And if that is the case and that is the plan, I have to imagine, right? There's going to be a lot of teams and a lot of owners. They're all looking around like, all right, when are we going to decide this is not tenable and it's time to break off to our own thing?
Yeah, agreed. And it's a shame because the Pioneer League's been gaining on these other leagues. And now if I'm a successful Pioneer League club, dude, Montana ain't that far away from Fargo, baby.
That's a whole different conversation, though.
I know. And we won't have it now, but the survivors will survive. And as a league, you're responsible to them, but you are very responsible for sustaining the others. And it's not good look.
Definitely. So, any case, there's an enlightening update from you about NOCO. I'm amazed this video is actually going to see the light of day. I thought it was just a myth and legend. So
kind of glad I waited, if I'm honest.
It kind of worked out in the end. Otherwise, you would have had part 5. So I'm excited for it. I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I'm going to find a new angle to harass you about and obviously I can't use the NOCO angle anymore. So go over to the Indie Ball Nation YouTube channel to watch the full video if you haven't already. We spent about an hour on this. He spends about 2.5 hours on it and gives you the full details. And I'm sure it is worth every minute of that video. I know I'm looking forward to watching it myself. So with that said, we go from Ryan's, I don't even know what to call it, slow descent into madness.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, we go from Ryan's life experience over to what we thought was going to be the lead story of the day, which was Hagerstown. They did something very rare around these parts, and they made a mid-season manager change. Mark Mason is out. He's been let go by the Boxcars. After a poor start this year, Shane Turner is going to take over. Mark's tenure with the Flying Boxcars resulted in a 42-110 record, so not great, but again, it's an expansion franchise that had a priority on taking care of off the field and on the field. So the record is what the record is. Mace's job was to establish a culture, and I think he did that well. As far as Shane Turner's background, he was with the Giants for all 3 of the World Series, most recent 3, and he's also living in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I assume Ryan's going to track down his address and get a live interview with him. Invite him over to the house, get the second mic out. We'll get a full, detailed conversation.
I mean, he's in Lancaster next week. Think he's won by then?
I'm just saying his ball club's only 4 games worse than Gastonia's right now. So
yeah, but he's 0-4 as a manager right now.
Well, I'm going to ask in a second, what do you think about Mace getting canned? But I am going to add
I'm not
here,
against Shane Turner. I'll say that now.
Okay, I will say this much. The roster is what the roster is. And I did talk to some of the guys about it, and they all were surprised at this decision. It seemed to have caught them off guard. And I don't want to talk bad about the guys on the roster. I'm sure they're all going out there and trying their best and doing everything they can. However, they are playing like we expected them to play. And we are seeing the results here, and they have not been good enough. And yeah, we'll leave it there. I don't think I can make it more diplomatic than that.
I'll go ahead. So, I mean, what we know, and look, the boys ain't happy, and that was no surprise to me. Mace is a guy who his players like him. I know guys who were looking out of York for years and stuck around because they love Mace. I think that's something too that brought guys in. I think he's got loyalty to guys. I mean, that's part of the problem. While we did mention the focus is on off the field building with this organization. We did talk to David Blankstone, the GM, in the offseason. He did seem to value winning. I'm not sure who makes a decision up top, but it means there is an internal culture of let's get wins at some point here. And this team is off to a wildly bad start this year. And while I think the guys have a right to not be happy, it sounds like they learned about this move through social media. Not how you're supposed to do that. I get Shane Turner coming in. I think he's got potential to be good here. We'll see. I'm not overly in love with the experience.
He is a veteran baseball man, after all.
A veteran baseball man. If you say that phrase, don't get me started. But to the players' point, I understand the players being unhappy. I understand that. But here's the hard truth of things, right? He built that roster. Whether this should be a good roster or not, I don't personally think it's going to be a great roster. He's responsible for that. And it is easier to move a manager than move an entire roster full of players at this point. Additionally, I like the guys. It doesn't mean they're bad ball players. But when you play, I'll clean this up for you. When you play like crap, sometimes crappy things happen. So if you're not happy about it, you can be unhappy with the organization. But part of it needs to be a look inside and say, and if you want to be selfish, it might have been a him or you thing, if you want to look at it that way. So there's multiple angles to look at it. I feel bad for Mace. I like him. I think very highly of him. I have not been impressed by what we've seen from him lately. But I also think he's dealing with some difficult circumstances for recruiting. And we do forget he did not look great at York, and Rick Forney turning around York so quickly has not helped the image there. But he is one who knows Indie Bowl well. He is well liked by players, and that has value. I hope he gets a good opportunity coming up. There should be some expansion opportunities coming in the Indie Ball front. There should be some early on coaches who are not working out great where they are, where maybe it becomes an opportunity for Mason, hopefully in a better situation. And maybe, dude, he's getting older, man. He's getting up there. We'll see. Yeah, maybe he decides to slow it down a little bit, but I like Mark. I hope for the best for him. Hope for the best for everyone involved, the team, for Shane Turner as well. I mean, welcome to the party. Let's get after it here. The guy's got some rings. Can't take those away. Got it with the Giants front office. Don't know how I feel about that, because the Giants front office is weird, but sure. Yeah, that's what we got.
Honestly, that's a perspective I hadn't thought too much about, but I do like a lot. I mean, it is his roster. He does own that. And I do wind up agreeing with a lot of that. I don't really know what other angle to take to it. I do wonder what kind of position you would look for going forward. And I do think we have kind of written off a lot of the struggles Mace has had recently on the field, whereas, well, York wasn't that great towards the end there. And then it's Empire State. No one's going to succeed with that. And then it's an expansion team. So it has been a lot of excuses that we probably wouldn't have afforded to other managers in that position. So I do think that's a really great point. So I hadn't totally considered there. So I do agree with that a lot. I think what's really hard, though, is just Mace has such a positive reputation around him. It has done an awful lot that it is still jarring to see it. That being said, if this move is strictly about we didn't get on-field results and we expect to start to see those, as much as it sucks that it happened, I do appreciate an organization taking that approach. I do appreciate an organization that says, yeah, winning matters. That's the appeal of baseball on this level, is that you can prioritize winning. You have no one telling you otherwise. As long as it's financially viable, or you are fine taking the losses from doing that, by all means, go out and win as many games as you can. And outside of, the major leagues in North America, this is the closest you're going to get to that, where it's just wins, losses. So if that was the motivation, I really do applaud the organization for taking a step that they think is necessary. I might not like it just because of the people involved in it, but I do appreciate them doing something they felt is necessary. And dare I say, there's some other organizations across the board in indie ball that should consider taking similar measures. on a fundamental basis.
This is going to also ruffle feathers, and I don't mean this as an attack on the people specifically involved in this situation here. So this is not a Shane Turner thing. Where I think there is something sometimes when an organization seems to be in a rut of removing an old head manager, a guy who's been around and might be a little stuck in his ways. That's not, again, this is not an attack on anybody involved. This is a general statement more on other organizations here. And I appreciate Hagerstown not being afraid to make a move like this, because we see younger managers get dropped left and right. Usually something else has to happen for an older guy to go.
Yeah.
However, I think sometimes not getting a guy who's like, no experience, but there are some young guys with some real experience who probably could get a look and not just be what gives the vibe of friends of ownership. So that's my thing. And I think that's the only thing rubbing me the wrong way about the Shane Turner edition. Other than that, I think he's fine. I think his potential will be good. Working in player development for this helps, but that's where I kind of go, like maybe a missed opportunity there, but that isn't me saying like we should never hire veteran managers. I think that's crazy. That's not what I'm saying. I think veteran managers are super important, but also you do need, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting situation. Hopefully they can start to turn their season around. Mm-hmm. But on that note, we are going to switch to just some, they're fairly notable achievements. We're going to mention it. We have some records falling. Tom Vace has set the Wild Things franchise record for wins. He got number 240 on Saturday, so a week ago. Today, he managed to become the Wild Things all-time leader for wins. Jamie Bennett's also moved into fourth place for Frontier League wins. Mike Pinto has hit 900 career wins as a manager. So love to see that for all those guys. Pinto, real dog. The fight to 1,000 is on. Hopefully he can get there. We'll definitely take an extra year. I just hope he gets it in 26 and not 27. That being said, he's definitely capable of getting to that 1,000 win mark. Also in the record front, on the team side, last Sunday, the Miners set 2 franchise records in their game against the Jackals for hits in a game with 24 and runs scored in a game with 25. So big day for those boys there. And then on this past Thursday, the American Association home run record fell. Jabari Henry hit home runs number 147 for the record and 148 as well. 148 came later in the game, but the first one, the record-setting one, came in the third inning. That game was kind of a blowout, but hey, it counts for something. So thoughts across the board on all those records, all worthy of being mentioned.
I will first mention he's more of a Sinking Springs guy than a Reading guy, but I actually know his house from the wheelbarrow in front of it. My wife has mentioned before. Where was I? So
what kind of sentence is that?
What?
I know his house from the wheelbarrow in front of it.
I was like, I don't think he's a Reading guy. That's all. And then I checked and he wasn't. I know the feel. So, anywho, Jabari, pretty amazing. Yeah, dude, I don't even know where to begin with that because there was a lot and I wasn't really expecting that list to be that long. So we're going to go for it here. I mean, I guess the home run record's the most impressive, right? I guess we'll call it that. Okay, yeah.
That or the 900 wins.
The longevity of the wins is kind of crazy, though. There's always the asterisk, and I guess you could apply it as well to the manager thing, but like some managers, it's just different. So like whenever it's like the minor league home run record in Bull Durham, it's like, it's a mixed feeling, I've always said, you don't want to be at your minor league team when they do your bobblehead night. You don't want to be an active player on the roster when they're doing your bobblehead night. That's a tough one. So on one side, it's not to chip away. It is just, if we're honest about part of that record, it does exist because other guys got pulled or guys, retired, but even that, it's a credit to his longevity. So, though I will never chip away at somebody who has devoted a ton of great play to indie ball and has really seemed to thoroughly enjoy it, and has just been a guy going out there and being a dog and working and putting up numbers and making us all look good. So, shout out to him. I guess in the end, yeah, that is my number one, I guess, standing out there. Anything, I'm trying to think of the other ones. Anything else stand out to you in that list?
I think like the franchise win record is impressive for Vaith, just because of the short time he's been there. You know, it takes a lot of really good seasons to get that, and to do it in such a short time is impressive. Bennett and Pinto both are impressive just because of longevity, right? You have to be good for a long time to start to accumulate those numbers. I don't have Jamie's win total in front of me right now, so I can't comment on how many he has, but I think he's around 700. Yeah, I do think those are all very impressive. Jabari Henry, though, to pass Abercrombie, it's very impressive to me. You have to stay on the same team, and like you said, you know, you got to be there for so long. It's, you know, it's a dual-sided sword, but still.
Talk about the benefits of giving a younger guy a chance. By the way, to circle back on that, Tom Vaith, we forget this was his first manager gig.
Yeah.
I mean, he had been with Winnipeg, but you know, this was his first go. And not only did he come out of the gates hot, he bounced back from a down year. He's kind of shown us everything, man. I mean, that first, he had one season, 2 games below 500, just bounced back with a casual 705 win percentage last year. Disgusting. So yeah, man, that sticks out maybe more to me than I would have thought now that you mention it.
Yeah, I do think it is. All of those longevity ones really are what's impressive and notable. But yeah, like you were saying with Tom Vaith, to come in first gig and really only have one off year, pretty damn impressive.
And one off year every 3, I usually just credit in those leagues as a rebuild year. Even if that wasn't the intended case, it can be a rebuild year if you do it right. And it seems like it went well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, and hey, he's been there for a while now, and he wants to keep racking this up. I mean, it's a decent chance he'll be at from 285 roughly by year's end, what we call it, 280, 285.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like, we could be having this conversation, you know, he could still be there 5 years down the line. We'd be like, oh, wow, you know, he's really getting closer to 700. Yeah, so yeah, that's the record talk. That is the off the field talk. We have on the field talk, and we may have 2 episodes this week. That's where we're at. Covered a lot of ground this week. Probably be the last big off the field week for hopefully a few months. And on that note, do you have anything to promote or add?
Indie Ball Nation, I'll be following up the NoCo video with some other videos that are less off the field drama, more on the field chat. But obviously this week I've been very focused on that. So keep an eye out. Yeah, that's about it. Indie Ball Nation on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, podcast platforms. There you go.
Yeah. Hoping to launch the in-season schedule this week at the start of June. Look for that. Have some content dropping soon, and yeah, that's about it. And Indie Ball Pod on Twitter, Indie Ball Pod, whatever else. So, on that note, check out Ryan's video. It's going to be something else.
It's a long one. No.
Hey, put the work in on, though. It'll be good. So
maybe it's a weird one. It'll be fine. It'll be great. Doesn't matter.
Until next time, don't forget to play ball.